retour parmi nous, and welcome back. Our first set of concurrent sessions focuses on how COVID-19 has impacted various sectors and how we can work together to support recovery. The tourism industry is stronger together. Merci de nous joindre à nous pour cette séance de débriefage sectoriel. Nous sommes heureux de présenter cet ensemble de séances simultanées qui mettront l'accent sur les répercussions de la COVID-19 sur chaque secteur ainsi que sur la façon dont nous pouvons travailler ensemble pour soutenir la relance. We are very grateful to the Toronto Star for sponsoring these sector debriefs. Bonne séance, and I'll see you again at 12:45.
Good morning, and welcome to the Hotel Association of Canada Sector Debrief. It is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Susie Grinnell, President and CEO. Susie launched her career in the association sector at the National Association of Consulting Engineering Companies in 2005. There, she quickly rose through the ranks from coordinator to vice president, overseeing government relations, media relations, events, conferences, and membership. She was recruited in 2013 by the Retail Council of Canada, one of Canada's largest trade associations, as Vice President of Federal Government Relations, head of the Ottawa office, and lead spokesperson for the retail industry on federal issues in Ottawa. Susie has received multiple awards for her work on advocacy campaigns, including 2 Programs of the Year awards from the Canadian Society of Association Executives, and she was honored with the Chairman's Award for exceptional contribution to the consulting engineering industry when she left in 2013. In her current role, Susie has driven a successful turnaround strategy, building the association's profile, influence, and membership to record levels. Under her leadership, HAC has grown from 39 to 2,200 members. It has delivered significant wins to level the playing field against short-term rental platforms like Airbnb, and in December, it will be named a Hotel Hero at the Pinnacle Awards for its leadership and successful advocacy during the pandemic. Please join me in welcoming Susie. Susie, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for that very generous introduction, Alana. Alana is our Senior Director of Government Relations, and she's going to be joining me for this session today. I'm going to start by sharing my screen so that I can take you through my presentation. We will do this as quickly as possible so that we can have lots of time for question and answers, a question and answer period as well. Just making sure that my screen is coming through clearly. Alana, is that working for you?
Yes, we can see it and hear you loud and clear.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's start with what the hotel industry was perhaps as in past tense prior to the pandemic and what we hope it will be again. Comprises 8,300 hotels, a $22 billion industry employing more than 300,000 people. And what's important here is who we employ. These are some of Canada's most vulnerable Canadians, predominantly women, millennials, immigrants, and visible minorities. People don't often realize that the hotel industry is actually owned by small businesses in the community. Hotels in Canada are Canadian owned. They are small and medium-sized businesses. This is normally, in often cases, family run, generational businesses that have one, maybe 2 hotels where they've got their life savings tied up in these facilities, and they operate those hotels in the community. It's not actually the brand that you might see on the hotel that owns these infrastructure. Let's talk about the pandemic and the impact. And I just thought it would be worth level setting here with the recovery by sector snapshot from Statistics Canada on how we compare to other sectors. And there we are at the second bottom of the list here, the dark red line. And what you can clearly see is that some sectors were actually not impacted at all by COVID. Some sort of were on par. Some did have an impact, but then very quickly recovered over a short period of time. And then you see this sort of long and protracted recovery here in the accommodation sector. And really, when you're operating at 70 to 100% revenue loss, what's happening here is that those small owners that I just described to you have used up their life savings over these last few months because there's not enough money coming in to cover the bills, and they're running out of options now for how they are going to pay for the fixed costs associated with this asset over what is going to be a very long winter. And so, in terms of how close we are to the edge here, the clock is ticking. And the far left here, you can see that 32% have indicated in our last member survey that they will not survive past November. So that means we have days left for a significant portion of this industry. I don't mean to be alarmist here, but these are the facts, and it's important that we talk about this because we need some solutions for how we're going to address this problem. I would say it's safe to say that, from my vantage point, I'm worried about half of this industry potentially going under if we don't start to see some more meaningful support. And there's two really factors here in the middle graph to why this is happening. It's not just that the occupancy levels are low and that people aren't coming into hotels and they aren't traveling. It's also that the revenue per available room has dropped significantly. So you'll see here the gulf between the top line, which was pre-COVID revenue, and the bottom line, which is where we sit now. If someone does happen to come into a hotel and stay there, the rate that's being charged is significantly lower than what it would normally be charged as well. So those two factors compound where we sit today economically. And of course, a significant impact on our employees, which has been the most heartbreaking story of all. So far, and these numbers are from September, 30% of the industry has been lost permanently, and I suspect that number is climbing by the day. Also on our member survey, 75% said they will not be able to remain in business without access to government-supported financing. 60% again, from the stat earlier, said that they will run out of cash to pay for fixed costs in the coming months, and this was in September. And 90% have identified the wage subsidy program as being critical. Now, we do need to give government credit for responding quickly and for rolling out broad-based programs. We've been working very closely with government through these programs. Many of these programs reflect our design and our ask of them as they develop these programs. They've been responsive to challenges in access. The wage subsidy, and there's a couple of assumptions here, assuming this lasts until the summer at the 65% rate, this does represent $6 billion in support for the hotel industry, which has been the lifeline. The industry would have been wiped out had it not been for the CEWS program. So we're still on the map because of that program. Now, of course, we saw Bill C9 tabled a couple of weeks ago. This is the new rent relief program that's going to provide support for fixed costs. It's not yet passed, but we suspect that it will be. And assuming that what is in that bill comes to fruition, we should see some additional support per month. And this is going to save some of our smaller members that were in that quadrant that you saw, the 32% that won't make it past December, assuming the government gets this money out the door quickly. And then there's the CEBA loan program. This is really a small loan program meant specifically for smaller business. Some of our smaller members have been able to access this, and it's been a help. So in total, $7.2 billion to date is a fraction of what we need, but it is a step for sure in the right direction, and we do need to thank government for what they've done to date. But there is a simple truth here, which is that some industries are recovering and others are not. And I think I would even draw a greater specification here. Some are allowed to recover and others are not. And the reason that we have been so impacted is because of the restrictions on mass gatherings and on travel bans. And so these restrictions have been in place since mid-March. It means that we can't have festivals, events, and conferences and weddings. And I mean, that's really the core of our business. And without those events, and we won't likely see them until we have a vaccine in place, we are sitting, hotels in this country are sitting virtually empty and have been since March. And so there does need to be a sector-specific solution. We, of course, have been banging the drum on this since mid-March, working with a number of other stakeholders. Others, I think, are also presenting at this exact same time, talking about similar topics. Obviously, been working closely with TIAC as well to launch the hardest hit coalition, which was in 48 hours, we brought together 75 business groups. This had an incredible yield and impact. And it's a topic that is just needs to be discussed a whole lot more. And we need to keep the focus on this, especially in these coming weeks as we are so close to the edge and we know the government's working on some support programs. Our PR work as an association We've had an extensive program that we've been running through the pandemic to ensure that we're on the radar, that government and the general public understand the gravity of this situation and also understand why it's worthy of taxpayers' dollars. So 3,000 stories. This is TV, radio, and print, and that's not just about the hotel industry. Those are articles that were driven by us. So it says Hotel Association or my name or one of my colleagues. Those are stories that were driven by our media work. Of course, our members have been supporting us incredibly over this period. Hundreds, thousands of letters sent. We've had hundreds of briefings with members of parliament. And all of this, of course, is working because we did see some deep commitments in the speech from the throne that the government will come to our aid. They use the words hardest hit in their language in the speech from the throne. All of our asks were in there, but of course, as I indicated in the earlier slides, time is of the essence. And so there's 4 key areas of focus. I would put these all in sort of the critical bucket area of what we know the government is working on, but what certainly needs to be expedited if we are going to prevent some of these deep losses that I referenced. The first is additional wage subsidy support. The second is fixed cost relief, so covering those bills that need to be paid regardless of whether anyone's coming into the hotel or not. Access to liquidity, there's been a big challenge there, needs to be addressed. And for us also, an opportunity here for us to level the playing field for all accommodation players. So here I'm talking about the Airbnbs of the world that aren't paying tax. They don't have to comply with any regulations. I mean, that's problematic at the best of times, but certainly during a pandemic, the fact that there's no, standard cleaning protocols and tracing that's being facilitated there is a problem. But rolling that all up for us, at the very least, they just need to be paying the same tax as us if we're going to have a level playing field. So just getting into some of these program areas, we are recommending to the government that they go back up to 85% coverage for the wage subsidy support. We are happy that it did not go down. The bottom dotted line indicated where the government was going before the speech from the throne. And what they did is they froze it at 65%, which is not a bad outcome. But at 65%, it is still not enough support for the hardest hit to be able to maintain as many employees as we want to maintain and that we are going to need into the recovery. So some opportunity there. On the fixed cost side of the equation, if you remove wages, so what are the bills that need to be paid? This is how it breaks down. So 25% of normal revenue for a hotel are the fixed costs. This is significant. This is different than a business who rents. This is what puts us in that bottom quadrant of deep impact and deep loss. Mortgages, property insurance, taxes, utilities, essential maintenance, core costs. Under the new rent program, these top 2 are going to be covered. So 10% of that 25%, and then you get 65% of that 10%, which I'll show on a different slide. What's covered for renters but not property owners are utilities and essential maintenance, and then core external costs are not covered at all. So let's take a 100-room hotel, a typical 100-room hotel, and let's remove the support the government's given us from wage subsidy, assuming a 65% coverage rate until the summer, and assuming 65% of that 10% on fixed costs, we remove that as well. What is left in terms of that shortfall? So just going back to the slide, of that 25% that's left, this is what it looks like in terms of cumulative working capital shortfall. So an average 100-room hotel is going to need access to about $450,000. And that's obviously going to need to come from debt if it's not coming from relief. And so in our view, a tourism and hospitality support package, and we know the government is working on this as we speak, it will need to include a combination of these 3 things. Obviously, in our view, we would love, the slide previous, this debt here that we need to cover, we would love a greater portion of that to come from these 2 buckets on the left, which is fixed cost relief and increased wage subsidy. But obviously the balance will need to come from a loan program as well. And where we find ourselves, unfortunately, in no man's land a little bit, is that some of the government's broad-based programs, especially on the loan side, has just been a complete miss for the hardest hit businesses. And that's because the banks are saying, look, you're too risky. We're just not going to lend to you. And so the government does need to step in and provide 100% guarantee against that risk if we're going to have access to debt. So debt for us is not even an option right now. Some hoteliers have been able to get debt from banks, most have not. And so this is critical. This is, if you're a business and you're looking now another 6 months ahead, you need to know, can I keep my doors open or not? How am I going to pay those bills? So we need to get this loan program fixed. That's critical. I do think there's an opportunity here for, on the fixed cost relief side, for us to bring the 10% here back up to something closer to this 25%. So an opportunity for us to move that needle with government and provide a deeper level of support in a tourism and hospitality package. There is a cap here that's a problem as well. It means that if you're a larger operator, you only get coverage for your first 4 hotels, as an example. And there is a cap per month that we believe could also be increased. So a deep opportunity there for government to provide more support for the harder hit. And then, of course, on the wage subsidy, as I indicated earlier, we believe that there is a strong case here for why would it be 85% in July and August? We're in a worse financial situation now, and the subsidy rate has dropped back to 65% and is not necessarily achieving the goal for which it was intended, which is to maintain the employee-employer connection. So this is my last slide before we jump into questions. The challenge here, and really the opportunity and I guess the decision before government right now, is how much of this industry are they willing to protect, and how much are they willing to sort of let go by the wayside? I think it's safe to say we'll probably lose at least 10%. Are we going to get up to that 60%? Are we going to be able to pull that down? That's really what's at issue here. And the opportunity for the government to further tailor these programs so that they really meet the need of the hardest hit sectors is really what's at issue. And in our view, there's 6 very fine reasons why the government should support us. The first, of course, being our diverse and frankly vulnerable workforce. There is a correlation between the studies that have come out indicating by the Bank of Canada and the government that the most vulnerable Canadians are employed in our sector. And so it should come as no surprise to anyone that these are the very jobs that are at risk. And so we certainly would like to see more support there. These are the backbone of our industry. We want to maintain these employees, but we also need to keep these businesses alive. Number 2 is these are good investment. These were very, the hotel industry was very healthy pre-COVID. Demand will come back. As much as we all love to be on Zoom meetings, we really just want to get to be face to face again. I believe there's going to be all sorts of demand out there once we have a vaccine to get back to business. And we can't have a critical breakdown of this infrastructure in every community in the country. Number 3, the commitments to health and safety and the professionalism of this accommodation space, the protocols and procedures and science-based processes now in hotels to keep people safe. The cleaning protocols are best in class. Also, other industries depend on us. I mean, we are so interconnected with the meetings industry, festivals and events. I mean, some of our urban centers, to be able to attract those meetings, you need places for people to stay. Where's the airline crew going to stay if we run out of hotels? For people to get married, for people to have hockey tournaments. I mean, we're so interconnected into the sort of fabric of communities. It is, not to mention rural and remote regions where you have essential services that need to get up into those regions, and there's only 3 hotels in the community. We start to lose those hotels, then it creates a whole myriad of even larger challenges. Of course, as I indicated, most are small and medium, so these are not big gargantuan industries that companies that have all sorts of access to offshore accounts, as people may think. And of course, here the short-term hotels are a professional accommodation provider, and here I'm comparing us to the short-term rental space out there who doesn't pay tax, who's not following health and safety guidelines and standards. We just believe that if the government is going to make an investment here, that they should do so for the very people that turned hotels into hospitals and quarantine facilities and came to the aid of government, and who certainly have never asked for any kind of support prior to this period. And that really wraps up my presentation. Alana, and I'll stop sharing my screen at this point, and certainly happy to answer any questions that this very diverse group may have.
Sure. Thank you so much, Susie. And I am just filtering in many questions as you wrap up here. Just really quickly, I saw a question come in, and they're asking if you could share the slide again that was before the remaining working capital shortfall slide. Are you able to just share your screen one more time?
Yeah, sure. So the slide that was before the working capital shortfall here.
Yes.
Let me just go back in time.
And I'll just invite.
Before working capital. Okay, so this one.
That is it. And I'll just invite Karina, if there's a specific question that you're looking to, or you just wanted to grab a screenshot of this, please just let me know and I'll just give you a couple seconds. Perfect. All right. She just loved the breakdown. Okay, great. So just moving into a couple of things here. The importance of the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Program was evident amongst our chat. And I've heard some comments that program has definitely helped, especially in the early days. It needs to be extended until all travel related restrictions are removed. What more can be done to secure this commitment? And are there others who also support this ask?
Yes, there are others that support this ask. In fact, we have, the Hardest Hit Coalition that I referenced earlier is a group. In fact, we're meeting tomorrow on this to sort of resurrect, do a relaunch, if you will, around these key buckets. And one of the central elements that we will be asking for is this increased wage subsidy support. I will say, though, that the government is resisting this one in particular. For a long time, this was the only program, but because now we have the rent program that is going to provide some relief for fixed costs, the government is encouraging us to look at this as sort of a suite of instruments for sort of a solution suite, if you will. So assuming that we do have a debt program coming, and we have reason to believe that may be the case, and we have this mortgage relief program, at least a component of it, and then we have the wage subsidy holding at 65%. They're sort of encouraging us to look at that broader picture as being, sort of almost in a package form. We, of course, have pushed back on that and said, this is a critical program. It needs to be extended. There's an economic case for why it should be extended. And one of the things that confounds me is, how is it that we have within this program, the government is supporting businesses with 5 and 10% revenue loss, and yet we may not see an increase for the businesses that really truly need it. So that's sort of central to the narrative that we're going to be pushing forward, and which we have been putting in front of government for the last number of months, and certainly we're on your side. We know how important this is, and we'll keep pushing.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question came in. In May, CBRE forecast that it could be as late as 2025 before the industry returns to 2019 RevPAR levels. Do you feel that this is still a fair forecast?
Oh, God. I honestly don't know. I don't think anybody does. I mean, even CBRE or STR's forecast right now for the next few months, I don't believe. I think it's overly optimistic, frankly. I just don't think there's any of us can guess where we go from here until we actually have a vaccine. Until we can, reasonably assume that public health is going to let us all get into a room together. And that really drives the core of recovery. And it's going to be not only recovery, but also the leisure traveler in the summer, which is going to be a big piece of the revenue portion into the summer months. So I think it's possible that it could be 2025. I hope it's not that long, but look, we're in square in the middle of the second phase of this, and it's worse than the first phase. So I don't know, and I'm not sure who does.
Right. You spoke a little bit about what hotels are doing in terms of, cleaning and safety protocols to keep visitors safe. Major chains have well-documented cleaning protocols. For the independent hotels, is there a standardized protocol that's being spearheaded by the association?
Yes, we have launched a program called Safe Stay, and we partnered with the American Hotel and Lodging Association. So it is a North American standard. And it was designed specifically to support our independent hotels who would not have access to some of that, to some of the programming that you would find in a flagged property through the brands. And so that is available. It is on our website. It was downloaded, hundreds and thousands of times since the beginning of this pandemic, and we do continue to update that those materials to ensure that our independents have access to it.
Perfect, thank you. At this stage, with most hotels experiencing layoffs, unfortunately, how do you see, we were experiencing a labor shortage prior to this. How do you see the labor shortage challenge in 2019 compared with the current situation today in the hotel industry?
I think the biggest preoccupation is how do, there is going to be a mass exodus. There already has. We've lost 30% of the industry. How do we prevent that number from getting up to somewhere around 50 or even higher? The truth is that these establishments may go under altogether, and there will be no employment. And so so it's a deep concern. I think it is going to take a long time for us to build back and get all of these employees back. That's going to be driven by demand. And of course, we just don't know when demand is going to come back based on when these restrictions are going to be lifted. And so our big focus right now is, can we get more wage subsidy support so that we can bring back as many employees as possible, so that we are as best positioned for a recovery in the spring as possible. What I'm worried about is the tranche of hotels that may go under if all of these employees are severed and then they move on and then we can't find them again in a few months' time. That I think is going to be so deeply disruptive and is going to result in deep losses if we're not able to manage the employee piece as effectively as possible during this period. So that's sort of the focus, and where we go from here is obviously concerning, but I think it's too early for us to talk about direct comparisons for how we get back to 2019 levels.
Great, thank you. I've just received a 2-minute warning, so we can probably squeeze in one more question here. I'm not sure if you could speak to, all levels of government, of course, are implementing support measures. Can you speak to anything around hotel, what is the impact on hotel taxes across Canada, and what needs to be changed in that model, if anything?
Are we talking about property tax here?
Property taxes, perhaps any other fees, what kind of relief programs do governments have in place to alleviate some of those taxes that hotels have to face?
So the new rent relief program that was just launched does have a property tax component. And so you will be able to use federal funds again, like your property taxes will be eligible, an eligible expense under this new program.
Yes.
And so we're delighted about that, because we've been working with our provincial counterparts on this property tax issue for the last number of months. And it's a really hard nut to crack, because you have municipalities who have no money. They're looking to the provinces for money. The provinces are looking to the feds for money. They can't run deficits. They can't cut back on, fire services and healthcare in those regions. And so it is, so it is a challenge. I think this rent relief program is going to provide part of the solution, but we are also now seeing, the province of Ontario as an example, and Quebec, that are moving in the direction of provincial support for some of these fixed costs, specifically around property tax. So we're starting to see that, and it's sort of been this game between the provinces and municipalities waiting to see what the federal government is going to do, and then coming out with their programs. And we're starting to see language where those programs intersect to say, okay, you can you can get coverage from either the feds or the provinces, maybe not necessarily both, but the interplay between those programs is sort of a live policy issue right now. But I do think there's going to be a deeper level of support at the provincial level coming. I'm optimistic that is coming. And again, where we work is sort of at the federal level, which we're delighted to obviously see the property tax piece included now in this rent program for the first time.
Absolutely. So we unfortunately are at the end of the session. I apologize if I haven't had a chance to get to everyone's question. I will encourage you to please do feel free to reach out to me via chat throughout the rest of the day. And you can also find more information on our website at hotelassociation.ca along with our contact information as well. And a big thank you to Susie for today's presentation. It was very insightful.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Have a great Congress.
Merci de votre participation. Thank you for joining us. The Tayac Tourism Congress is brought to you in part by our amazing sponsors and virtual exhibitors. Please take some time to visit them at our virtual marketplace.